Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The music was loud, the chatter lively, and the warm glow of the chandelier cast soft flickering light over the room. It was one of those elegant but casual gatherings, just close friends, good food, and plenty of wine. My husband, Daniel, was across the room, deep in conversation with someone from work. I was near the fireplace, a half-full glass of Merlot in my hand, laughing at something my friend Lisa had just said. And then I felt it, a presence at my side, close but not intrusive. I turned slightly, expecting another friend or an acquaintance joining our conversation. Instead, I found myself face to face with Eric. Eric had been Daniel's friend for years, one of his closest. He was always polite, always charming in that effortless way. But we had never really shared more than passing small talk at gatherings like this. Tonight, though, there was something different about him. He leaned in, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You have no idea, do you?" I blinked, caught off guard. "No idea about what?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. His eyes held mine for a moment, studying my face as if debating whether to say more. Then he smiled a small, knowing smile that sent a strange, unexpected ripple through me. "About the way people look at you, the way you carry yourself. You'd light up a room without even trying." I felt a warmth rise to my cheeks, and I laughed, brushing it off. "That's just the wine talking." But he shook his head. "No, it's not." There was something unsettling about the way he said it, not in a bad way, but in a way that made me suddenly hyper-aware of myself, of him, of the space between us. I hadn't felt something like that in years. Not since, well, not since Daniel and I were younger. I glanced toward my husband. He was still engrossed in his conversation, unaware of the moment unfolding just a few feet away. Eric stepped back slightly, as if realizing he'd said too much. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he said, a slight chuckle in his voice. "I'm not uncomfortable," I said before I could stop myself, and that was the truth. I was surprised, yes, but there was something about the way he said it, about the quiet confidence in his voice, that stirred something in me, something I hadn't thought about in a long time. Lisa, oblivious to what had just passed between us, pulled me back into the conversation, and I forced myself to laugh at whatever joke she was telling. But my mind was elsewhere. What had just happened? Eric had never spoken to me like that before, never looked at me quite like that. And yet I couldn't deny that it felt nice. I wasn't sure what to do with that realization. The party continued, and I tried to shake off the feeling. But no matter how many times I sipped my wine, how many times I laughed at a joke or joined in a conversation, I kept feeling Eric's eyes on me. Not in a way that felt predatory or inappropriate, just present, attentive. At one point, I excused myself to step outside onto the patio for some fresh air. The night was cool, the distant hum of traffic barely reaching the quiet space. I leaned against the railing, taking a slow breath. "Are you okay?" I turned, and of course, it was Eric. I smiled, shaking my head. "Just needed a break from all the noise." He nodded, stepping up beside me, his hands resting casually on the railing. "You seem different tonight." I glanced at him. Different how? He hesitated before answering. like you're remembering something you forgot about yourself. His words settled over me like a weight, and for a moment, I couldn't find a response. Was I? I had been married for 20 years. I loved Daniel. He was a good man, a good husband, but somewhere along the way, between raising kids, work, and the everyday routine of life, I had stopped feeling seen, not in the way Eric had just seen me. And that realization was terrifying. Eric must have sensed my thoughts because he took a step back, giving me space. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, he said softly. I think sometimes we all need to be reminded of who we are. I exhaled slowly, turning to face him fully. And who do you think I am? His eyes searched mine for a long moment before he smiled. Someone worth noticing. A shiver ran through me, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. Before I could respond, the door behind us opened, and Daniel's voice called out, "Hey, there you are. I was looking for you." I turned quickly, the moment between Eric and me vanishing in an instant. I smiled at my husband, my safe place, my anchor, just getting some air. Daniel walked over, pressing a light kiss to my forehead. "Come back inside. They're about to bring out dessert." I nodded, slipping my hand into his as we walked back inside. I risked one last glance at Eric. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, and in that moment, I knew this night wasn't over yet. The party had shifted by the time Daniel and I returned inside. Dessert had arrived, and people had gathered around the large, opulent table that had been set up in the center of the room. The sweet scent of chocolate and vanilla filled the air, mixing with the lingering notes of wine and candlelight. Laughter echoed through the space as people indulged in slices of cake and shared stories. But the warmth of the gathering did little to shake the strange energy that had settled between me and Eric. I tried to focus on the conversation around me. My husband talking to a colleague, Lisa telling a funny story about her kids. But it was as if the air had changed. I couldn't help but feel that pull, that presence just beyond my peripheral vision. And every time I stole a glance, I saw Eric watching me, not openly, not in a way that would draw attention, but his eyes were always there, following my movements, lingering just a moment too long. It was unsettling, and yet there was something strangely thrilling about it. I excused myself to the bathroom, hoping to clear my head. The sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood floor echoed in the empty hallway as I made my way down the quiet corridor. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, pressing my palms against the cool wood. What was happening? It wasn't just the words he'd said earlier, or the way he'd leaned in close to me in that quiet corner of the room. It was this feeling I couldn't shake, the tension that had settled in the air between us, as if some unspoken connection had been made. I hadn't felt something like that in a long time. I couldn't explain it. It was like I was suddenly seeing myself through someone else's eyes, and not just anyone's, Eric's eyes. It was a strange, heady mix of validation and confusion. I had spent years in my marriage, in my routine, and had all but forgotten what it felt like to be seen in such a way, to be noticed not just for what I did, but for who I was. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts from my mind. This wasn't like me. I was married. I loved Daniel. But why did it feel like something was stirring deep within me? When I stepped out of the bathroom, I ran into Eric. He was leaning against the wall as if waiting for me, his posture relaxed, but his eyes focused, intense. I took a breath, about to walk past him, but he stepped forward just a little, enough to block my path. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" I hesitated, my heart beating a little faster than usual. There was something in his tone, something that made me stop even when every instinct told me to keep walking. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just needed a moment." He didn't move, didn't break his gaze. "You don't have to pretend with me, you know." The words hung in the air between us, thick and charged. I could feel the heat of the conversation, the weight of it pressing against me, but I didn't know how to respond. "Eric," I started, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to say. "I've known you for years, Sarah," he said, his voice low, "and I don't think I've ever seen you this alive." His words hit me harder than I expected. Alive? Had I really become so lost in the daily grind, in being a wife, a mother, a friend, that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply be, to feel something other than what my responsibilities demanded of me? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know what you mean." He stepped a little closer, and I felt the space between us shrink, the air growing warmer with each second. He was close enough that I could feel his breath, warm and steady. "I mean," he began, his eyes searching mine, "that I've always known you were someone special. But tonight, you're radiating something else, something I can't quite name, but I can feel it. It's magnetic." His words, the intensity in them, made my pulse quicken. I had never seen Eric like this. He was always the charming, friendly guy. But this was different. It was like he was seeing something in me that I didn't even know was there. I took a step back, feeling the weight of his gaze and the heat of the moment. "Eric, Just then, the door to the living room opened, and Daniel's voice called out, "Sarah, everything okay?" I blinked, breaking the trance. I hadn't realized how much I'd been leaning toward Eric, how much closer he had gotten without me even realizing it. I cleared my throat, straightening up. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just getting some fresh air." Eric gave a subtle nod, stepping back slightly. His expression didn't change, but I saw something there, something I couldn't quite read. Maybe it was disappointment, maybe it was something else. "All right," he said softly. "I'll let you get back to Daniel." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded with a small, almost imperceptible smile. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, heart racing, breath a little shallow. I forced myself to walk back into the living room to join Daniel and the others, as if nothing had happened. But the truth was, nothing felt the same anymore. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. The chatter, the music, the laughter, it all seemed distant, muffled, as if I was watching everything unfold from behind a full window. I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Eric's words, the way he'd looked at me. It was like the spark of something had been lit inside me, and now I wasn't sure how to put it out. But as the night wore on, something else started to creep into my thoughts. the quiet realization that maybe it wasn't something I wanted to put out. The next few days passed in a blur. The party seemed like a distant memory, a momentary spark that had faded into the routine of my life. I tried to shake off the strange pull I felt after that night, to go back to the familiarity of my marriage, to my life as it had been before Eric's words and that unsettling look. But I couldn't. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Eric's face, his eyes intense and knowing. I heard his voice in my mind, the words that had both intrigued and terrified me. You're radiating something else, something magnetic. I couldn't escape it. It was as if a part of me had awakened, something I hadn't felt in years, something I hadn't even known was missing. I told myself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment, an innocent compliment. But there was more to it than that. I realized there was an undercurrent, something deeper, something that both scared and excited me. It was so subtle, so hidden beneath the surface of everyday life, but it was there. And every time I saw Eric, every time our paths crossed, that tension seemed to build just a little more. It was in the way he looked at me when no one else was paying attention. It was in the quiet conversations we had where he seemed to notice every little thing about me, things no one else did. And it was in the way he made me feel alive, like I was more than just a wife, more than just a mother. But it wasn't just about Eric. It was about me, too. I had spent so many years being defined by my roles, wife, mother, friend, that I had lost touch with who I really was. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being just Sarah. But Eric, in his own way, had reminded me of who I could be, of the woman I used to be before life became a series of checkboxes and responsibilities. I couldn't deny that it felt good. It was a Saturday morning when it happened again. Daniel and I were in the kitchen making breakfast together. It was one of those lazy mornings, the kind we used to have before our lives got busier with work and the kids. The radio was playing softly in the background, and we were laughing about something silly, like we always did. But as I stood there flipping pancakes, I noticed that familiar sense of restlessness building inside me again. I tried to brush it away, but my mind kept drifting back to that night, to Eric's words. "Everything all right?" Daniel asked, his voice pulling me back to the present. I smiled, trying to push my thoughts aside. "Yeah, just a little distracted. Nothing serious." But Daniel didn't buy it. He gave me a knowing look, one that said he could tell something was off. "You sure?" he pressed. I hesitated. Should I tell him? Should I tell him about the way Eric had looked at me, the way it had made me feel? But I couldn't. I loved Daniel. I didn't want to hurt him, to make him question something that wasn't even real. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound convincing. "Just thinking about some work stuff. You know how it is." Daniel seemed satisfied with that explanation and went back to stirring the eggs. But my mind kept racing. The more I tried to push the thoughts away, the stronger they became. And the more I saw Eric, the more I realized something I wasn't ready to admit to myself, let alone anyone else. I was drawn to him. It wasn't just his words. It was the way he made me feel, the way he noticed me in ways that made me feel special, wanted, seen. It was a dangerous thought, but it was there, gnawing at me, growing stronger each day. Later that afternoon, I went to the grocery store to pick up a few things. As I walked down the aisles, I ran into Eric. He was alone, picking out some produce. He turned to me with that familiar quiet smile, and for a moment, it felt like time stood still. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, just enough for me to hear. "I was hoping I'd run into you." I couldn't help but smile back, even though my heart was racing. "What are you doing here?" "Just picking up a few things," he replied. "I've got a barbecue at my place later. You guys coming?" I nodded. "We're planning to. Daniel's looking forward to it." Eric's eyes softened, and I saw that spark again, that unspoken connection between us. "Good," he said quietly. "I'll see you there then." He lingered for a moment longer, and I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. There was something unspoken, something we both knew but weren't ready to acknowledge. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and smiled before quickly moving on. But as I walked down the aisle, my heart was pounding in my chest. What was happening? Why was this feeling growing inside me? That evening, as Daniel and I arrived at Eric's barbecue, the tension between us was palpable. I could feel it in the air, thick and heavy. Every time Eric and I crossed paths, it was as if there was a magnetic pull between us, something we both tried to ignore but couldn't escape. And then, as the night wore on, the moment came, the moment when it all became undeniable. Eric was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, when he looked over at me. His eyes met mine, and for a moment it felt like the rest of the world faded away. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice barely audible above the laughter and music, "I need to talk to you." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. I had a feeling I knew what was coming. I took a step closer, my breath caught in my throat. "What is it?" His gaze never wavered. "I can't stop thinking about you, about us. I need to know if you feel it too." The words hit me like a freight train. The world around me blurred, and for a moment, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Did I feel it? I didn't know, but in that moment, I couldn't deny that I did. The weight of Eric's words hung in the air, thick and charged, like the calm before a storm. I stood there, frozen, the noise of the party around me seeming to fade away as I processed what had just been said. Did I feel it too? The question echoed in my mind like a broken record, refusing to let go. For a moment, I was paralyzed, caught in the complexity of it all. The suddenness of Eric's confession, the tenderness in his voice, the heat in his gaze, and then, just as quickly, doubt crept in. I glanced around, looking for some distraction, anything to break the tension. But the faces of friends and family continued to laugh and mingle, oblivious to the storm that was brewing in my chest. Daniel was somewhere across the yard, chatting with a neighbor, unaware of the turmoil unfolding between Eric and me. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Eric's voice broke through my thoughts, low and regretful. I had to know if you felt the same." I swallowed hard. "Eric, Before I could finish, he took a small step back, his face softening with understanding. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I shouldn't have said anything. It's just when I'm around you, I can't help but feel something. I thought maybe you felt it, too." His voice was a quiet whisper now, a mix of vulnerability and raw honesty. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between what was right and what his heart desired. And in that moment, I realized something that shook me to my core. This wasn't just about Eric anymore. It was about me, my feelings, my choices. For years, I had been so caught up in what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be, that I had forgotten to listen to my own heart. The roles of wife and mother had consumed me, and I had let them define me. But now, standing in front of Eric, I felt something stirring deep within me, a longing I had buried long ago. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before speaking. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. "I love Daniel. I do. But you make me feel seen in a way I haven't felt in years." Eric's expression softened, his gaze searching mine, as though he was looking for an answer in my eyes. "I get it. I never wanted to complicate your life, Sarah, but you deserve to feel alive, to feel wanted. You've been so strong for so long for everyone else. But what about you? What do you want?" The question hung between us, raw and unspoken. What did I want? I had spent so many years being what everyone needed me to be that I didn't even know how to answer. But I knew one thing. This moment was mine. The choice was mine. "I need to think," I said, my voice steady but uncertain. "I need to figure out what this all means." Eric nodded, stepping back a little, his face respectful. "Take your time. I won't pressure you, Sarah. I just needed you to know." With that, he turned and walked back toward the grill, leaving me standing there, heart racing, mind spinning. I watched him for a long moment, his broad back turned toward me as the realization of what had just happened sank in. Later that evening, as Daniel and I left the party, I kept replaying the conversation in my mind. The words, the unspoken tension, the raw, real feeling that had sparked between me and Eric. And the question that I still couldn't answer. What now? Back at home, I slipped into bed beside Daniel. The warmth of his body next to mine was a stark contrast to the cool, restless thoughts swirling in my head. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close, but I couldn't fully settle into the comfort of his touch. My mind was elsewhere, caught in the aftermath of everything that had happened. "Everything okay?" Daniel murmured, his voice soft with concern. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a little tired." He kissed my forehead, a gesture of affection that in that moment felt both comforting and distant. But I knew deep down that this was the crossroads. My life, my marriage, everything I thought I knew was shifting. The road ahead was uncertain, but I couldn't ignore the path that had suddenly opened before me. The next few days passed in a blur, each moment feeling like a heavy step toward something I couldn't quite name. I went about my days, tending to the responsibilities of home and family, but beneath the surface, everything had changed. And then finally, I found the courage to confront my feelings. I sat down with Daniel, my heart heavy in my chest. He deserved honesty. He deserved the truth. "Daniel," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked up from his book, concern flickering in his eyes. "What's going on, Sarah?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been struggling with something I should have told you about sooner. Eric, he said something to me at the party, and it made me realize that I've been neglecting a part of myself, a part of me that's been buried for a long time. Daniel's expression softened, his brow furrowing slightly. What did he say? He said he couldn't stop thinking about me, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. And the truth is, I've been thinking about him too. There was a long silence. I could see the hurt in Daniel's eyes, but there was no anger, no bitterness, just pain. I don't know what this means for us, Daniel, I continued, my voice shaking, but I needed you to know. Daniel took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. I understand, Sarah. I think I've seen this coming. Maybe not the specifics, but the distance between us. It's been there for a while. The words stung, but there was something in them that felt strangely freeing. I wasn't alone in this. We've both been growing in different directions, Daniel said quietly. Maybe it's time for us to figure out what that means. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about Eric. It wasn't even about the fleeting spark that had ignited between us. It was about me, about finding myself again, about rediscovering who I was beyond the roles I had played for so long. As the days went on, I knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be difficult conversations, moments of doubt, and the need for growth and understanding. But I was ready. I was ready to reclaim my own journey, no matter where it led. And as for Eric, I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain. The story wasn't over. The chapters were still being written, and whatever came next, I was going to face it with honesty and an open heart. Because sometimes you have to let go of the life you've known to embrace the life that's waiting for you.